I never meant to notice her the way I did. It started small, like the quiet sound of her back gate closing late at night, or the light in her kitchen glowing long after the rest of the street had gone dark. I'd see her through the window sometimes, her hair tied up carelessly, standing over the sink with a glass of wine she never seemed to finish. There was something about her stillness that pulled me in, even when I tried to look away. She lived next door, Mrs. Lane, though she told me once, in a half-laugh, that she hated being called that. "It makes me sound like someone's grandmother," she said, brushing it off with a wave of her hand. She was 46. A widow. And yet she moved with this quiet strength that made everyone else feel unfinished. I was 24. Too young, maybe, but old enough to know what I was seeing. The first real conversation we had was about something stupid, a package left on her porch. She opened the door, thanked me, and tried to close it quickly, but her eyes lingered just a moment longer than they needed to. A flicker. A hesitation. Like she knew she'd just let something slip. After that, it became casual. Passing each other at the mailbox, short words about the weather, little smiles that lasted too long. But there was weight under it. I could feel it pressing down on every silence. One evening, I found myself outside, leaning on the railing of my porch with a book I wasn't really reading. She stepped out too, carrying a sweater across her arms though the night was warm. She saw me. I saw her. Neither of us went back inside. "Too loud in your house?" she asked after a while. Her voice carried softly across the quiet. I shook my head. "Too quiet, actually." She gave me this small, tired smile, the kind that hides more than it shows. Then she sat down on her own steps, just a few feet away, not quite close enough to touch. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was alive. My pulse wouldn't slow down. When she finally spoke again, her voice was lower. "You shouldn't spend your evenings like this. You're too young to be bored." The way she said it, it wasn't casual. It wasn't neighborly advice. It was a warning. Maybe even a confession. I laughed under my breath, trying to disguise the tremor in it. "Maybe I like being bored. Gives me time to notice things." She turned her head then, really looking at me. Her eyes caught the porch light, and I swear they searched deeper than I was ready for. "And what is it you notice?" she asked. My throat went dry. I wanted to say everything. Her hands, her voice, the way she carried herself like she was trying not to break. Instead, I said nothing. My silence seemed to answer for me. Her lips parted, just slightly, like she had words she was fighting back. Then she stood, pulling the sweater tighter across her shoulders, though the air was still warm. "You're too young," she whispered, not to scold, not to dismiss, just as if she was reminding herself. But she didn't go inside. She stayed there, one hand on the railing, her eyes holding mine like she couldn't quite let go. And then, the sharp ring of my phone shattered the moment. She blinked, startled, finally turning toward her door. My hand shook as I reached for my pocket, the sound echoing too loud in the night. I looked at the screen. One name flashing. Her door was still half open. She hadn't stepped inside yet. I didn't know whether to answer, or follow her. I didn't answer the phone. By the time the ringing stopped, her door had closed, and the night settled back into its stillness. But something had shifted. The sound of her whisper, "You're too young," kept running through my head, sharper than the ring of any call. The next morning, I caught sight of her in her garden, kneeling in the dirt with a pair of gloves and an old sun hat that made her look softer, younger somehow. I stood there longer than I should have, pretending to check my mailbox. She glanced up and caught me staring. For a second, I thought she'd wave me off. Instead, she tugged the hat off and called across the fence. "You don't work mornings?" I shrugged. "Freelance. Writing gigs. Keeps me home more than it should." She smirked, but there was a trace of sadness in it. "I used to paint. Before." She trailed off, brushing soil from her hands. She didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone on the block knew her husband had died 2 years ago. Car accident. Sudden. Brutal. I nodded carefully. Do you still paint? She looked down at the gloves, then back up. Not anymore. Too much silence in it now. The way she said it hit me harder than I expected. I wanted to tell her I understood silence, that mine wasn't from loss but from being invisible most of my life, the youngest in a family that never quite noticed when I was in the room. But I didn't say that. I just leaned on the fence and asked, "What did you paint?" "People. Faces. Strangers, mostly." A pause. "It's easier than painting the people you know. You can't ruin what you never had." Something about that stayed with me. She spoke like someone who carried regrets around like extra weight, like she was always aware of them pressing on her shoulders. That night it rained. The street was slick with light, and I caught her sitting on her porch, watching the downpour. I walked over without thinking, the water soaking my shirt by the time I reached her steps. "You'll catch a cold," she said softly, shifting to make space. "Maybe." I sat down beside her, too close for just neighbors, not close enough for what I really wanted. The rain filled the silence between us. "Your husband," I started, then hesitated. "Was he older?" She gave a small laugh, but it didn't reach her eyes. "No. Same age. We grew up together. First love, first everything. I don't think I ever learned who I was without him." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just let my hand rest on the step between us, close enough that if she moved hers just slightly. She noticed. I saw her fingers tense, then relax. Slowly, carefully, she shifted until her hand brushed mine, not a grip, not a claim. Just the faintest touch, like testing a flame. Neither of us looked down. We stayed like that, rain rushing around us, two people clinging to a silence that felt louder than words. The rain didn't stop until well past midnight. By then, our hands were still resting close, almost touching, and I couldn't tell if it was the cold that made me shake or the way she hadn't moved away. But then the beam of headlights swept across the street. A car slowed near her driveway, and she pulled her hand back so quickly it stung. It was her sister. I recognized her from a neighborhood gathering months ago. The car door slammed, and the sound cracked the spell. "You should go," she whispered, standing fast, pulling the sweater around her as if to hide the fact that anything had passed between us. I went, but I didn't sleep. The next afternoon, I heard voices through the thin hedge between our yards. Her sister's voice, sharp, urgent. "You can't keep shutting yourself in like this. People are talking." Her reply was lower, almost lost in the breeze. "Let them. And that boy next door." My chest tightened. "Stop," she cut in quickly, her voice brittle. "He's just kind." The words should have reassured me. But the pause before she said them told another story. Later that evening, I found myself knocking on her door before I could talk myself out of it. She opened it half an inch, then the rest. "You shouldn't be here," she said immediately. "Then tell me to go." My voice came out harsher than I meant. Her lips parted, but no words followed. Instead, she stepped back just enough for me to enter. The air inside smelled like paint thinner and something floral, like a room that hadn't been opened in years. I noticed the canvases stacked against the wall, faces half-finished, colors dulled by dust. "You still paint?" I said softly. She folded her arms tight. "Not really." "Then why hide them?" Her eyes narrowed, not in anger but defense. "Because some things aren't meant to be finished." I wanted to tell her I disagreed, that I wanted to see every unfinished part of her, but my throat locked. Instead, I stepped closer, so close I could see the small line at the corner of her mouth, the tremble in her jaw as she tried not to look at me. "You should leave," she said again, but it sounded thinner this time. "Do you want me to?" Her breath caught. She turned her head, but not before I saw the truth flicker across her face. The space between us closed almost on its own. My hand hovered near hers, then moved higher, brushing her wrist. She didn't pull away. Her eyes met mine, searching, questioning, daring, and for one impossible second, I thought she'd let it happen. The kiss. The line we couldn't take back. But then the doorbell rang. We both froze. Her chest rose sharply, her lips parting as if the sound had cut her open. She stumbled back, pressing a hand to her forehead. "Don't," she whispered, shaking her head. "Not now. Please." The bell rang again, louder this time. She looked at me once more, eyes wide with something between fear and longing. And then she turned away. The doorbell kept echoing in my head long after the visitor had gone. I never saw who it was. She refused to answer until the knocking stopped, and by the time silence returned, the air between us was too heavy to breathe. I left her house that night without another word. But the pull, it didn't let me go. Days passed. I tried to bury myself in work, but every time I looked at the blank document on my laptop, her face filled the space instead. I found myself pacing near the fence, waiting for her to step out. She didn't. Her curtains stayed closed. By the fourth evening, I couldn't take it. I knocked on her door again. This time, she didn't hesitate. She opened it wide, her expression sharp, almost angry. "You can't keep coming here," she said. "I'm not here to play games." My voice cracked. "You pull me in, then shut me out." Her laugh was bitter, too sharp for the quiet hallway. "Pull you in? Do you have any idea what this looks like? You're young enough to be my son. That's not what I am to you." The words came out before I could stop them, and the silence that followed burned hotter than the argument. She turned away, pressing her hand against the wall like she needed it to hold her up. "People already talk," she whispered. "My sister, the neighbors. They think I've lost control since he died. And maybe I have. But you're a mistake I can't afford." I stepped forward before I could think better of it. "Then why don't you stop me? Why didn't you pull away that night in the rain?" She spun, eyes flashing, her voice breaking in the middle. "Because I don't want to." The confession hit me like a blow, not gentle, not romantic, but raw, torn straight from a place she'd been fighting to hide. For a moment neither of us moved. Her breath came uneven, my pulse hammering so loud I was sure she could hear it. "Do you think I don't see the way you look at me?" she whispered. "Do you think I don't feel it every time you're near? I haven't let anyone touch me in years. And now you." She stopped, her throat tightening, her hands curling at her sides. I closed the distance, so close I could see the trembling at the corner of her lips. "Say it," I breathed. Her eyes locked on mine, wide, wet, furious with herself. "I can't." The air between us snapped taut. My hand hovered inches from her cheek, her breath trembling against my wrist. She didn't move. She didn't stop me. I thought the moment would break into something unstoppable. And then a shadow moved across the window, someone passing by on the street. Her entire body went rigid, and she pulled back like she'd been burned. "Not here," she whispered. "Not like this." The distance yawned between us again. But the words hung there, unfinished, undeniable. The next morning, I opened my front door to find an envelope wedged into the frame. No name, no return address. Just my apartment number written in careful script. Inside was a single piece of paper. "People are watching. Stop embarrassing yourself." The words hit like a slap. My eyes darted across the street. Curtains twitched. A car door slammed somewhere down the block. I felt exposed, like the entire neighborhood had been waiting for me to find it. I shoved the note into my pocket and tried to pretend it didn't matter. But when I saw her later that evening, finally stepping outside with a basket of laundry, I couldn't keep it in. "They know," I said. My voice cracked sharper than I meant. She froze mid-step, basket digging into her hip. "What?" I pulled the note from my pocket and held it out. She read it once, twice, her knuckles whitening around the paper. Then she tore it in half, then into quarters, like shredding it might erase the truth. Her voice was low, almost shaking. "My sister. It has to be." I swallowed hard. Why would she, Because she thinks she's saving me. She cut in, pressing the scraps of paper into her palm until her skin flushed red. She thinks I'm fragile. That I can't trust myself. Her eyes lifted to mine then, blazing with something between fury and shame. And maybe she's right. I stepped closer, instinct pulling me in. No. She's wrong. You're not fragile. You're the strongest person I know. Her laugh was sharp, hollow. Strong? I can't even decide if I want you. The honesty in it made my chest tighten. I wanted to tell her that she didn't need to decide, that I was already there. But before I could speak, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and froze. Her sister again. Don't answer, I said quietly. But she did. She turned slightly away, voice clipped and brittle. Yes, I got it. No, I'm fine. Please stop. Her hand trembled as she ended the call. Then she faced me, eyes glassy, jaw tight. She thinks you're using me. That you'll get bored, move on, and I'll be left with nothing. The words stung deeper than I expected. Do you believe her? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she pressed the heel of her hand to her temple like the world was too loud, too heavy. I don't know what to believe anymore. The silence that followed cut sharper than any argument. Finally, she whispered, almost to herself. I shouldn't have let it get this far. She turned to go inside, but my hand shot out, catching her wrist. Not tight, just enough to stop her. She didn't pull away. She didn't move at all. I'm not leaving, I said, voice rough. Not unless you tell me to. Her lips parted, but no words came. Her whole body was trembling, not from fear, but from something deeper. And then, faint but clear, from inside her house, came another sound. A voicemail playing on speaker. Her sister's voice, sharp, cutting through the silence. If he doesn't stop, I'll make sure everyone knows. Her eyes widened. Mine did too. The line we thought was hidden wasn't hidden anymore. The voicemail kept playing, her sister's voice echoing from inside her house like a verdict. He's too young. You're grieving. People will laugh at you, not him. Stop this before you ruin yourself. She slammed the phone down, the sound cracking through the room. For a moment, all I saw was the tension in her shoulders, the way her breath came shallow, like she was holding herself together by sheer force. You should go, she whispered. No. Her head snapped toward me, eyes blazing. Don't you understand? They're right. Everyone will see this as pathetic. A widow clinging to someone half her age. You'll leave eventually. They all do. I stepped closer, voice breaking. I'm not them. Her arms folded tight across her chest, a shield she couldn't hold steady. You think you know what you want, but you don't. You'll wake up one day and wonder why you wasted your time on someone like me. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I reached out, fingers brushing the edge of one of her half-finished paintings leaning against the wall. The portrait of a stranger, eyes blurred, mouth unfinished. You said it yourself. I murmured. It's easier to paint strangers. But I'm not a stranger. You know me. I know you. Maybe that's why you're scared. Her jaw trembled. She pressed her palms to her eyes, whispering through them. You make me want things I swore I was done wanting. The air tightened, like everything hung on the next breath. Slowly, carefully, I stepped closer until my hand rested lightly on her wrist. She didn't move away. Her pulse thudded against my touch, uneven, frantic. Then stop swearing it away, I said. Want them. Want me. Even if it's messy. Even if it scares you. Her eyes lifted, glassy with tears she hadn't let fall in years. For the first time, there was no wall, no bitterness, no pretense. Just raw, unguarded truth. You'll break my heart, she whispered. Maybe, I admitted. But maybe I'll be the one who finally doesn't. The silence after stretched too long, the kind that teetered between collapse and surrender. And then, with a small, shaky exhale, she closed the gap. Her lips brushed mine, not a kiss, not fully. Just the briefest, trembling press, like she was testing if the world would end. It didn't. When she pulled back, her hand lingered against my chest, her eyes searching mine. If we do this, there's no going back. I swallowed hard. I don't want to go back. Her breath caught again, and this time, she didn't turn away. The choice hung in the air, fragile, terrifying, real. We hadn't fixed the whispers outside, hadn't erased the gap between our years, hadn't silenced her sister. But in that moment, none of it mattered. For the first time, she let herself lean into me, not fully, not yet, but enough to say without words, I see you. I choose this. What came next was uncertain. But the fear wasn't enough to keep us apart anymore. The night we finally let the walls drop didn't solve everything. It didn't silence the whispers or erase the note that had been shoved into my doorframe. But it gave us something no one else could touch, the truth between us. For a while, we lived in that fragile middle ground. I'd linger on her porch with coffee in the mornings, and she'd sit beside me with her hair still damp from a shower, not quite ready to admit we'd crossed the line. Other nights, she'd paint again, and I'd sit quietly, pretending to read while she filled blank canvases with color. She never said it out loud, but I think my being there gave her permission to pick up the brush again. Her sister came by less, though the tension never disappeared. Once, I overheard them in the kitchen, voices low but urgent. "He's just a boy," her sister said. She answered, steady this time. "No. He's the first person who's seen me in years." When she told me about that later, her voice was softer, almost shy. I don't know why I said it. But it was true. I didn't need her to say more. The weight of those words was enough. Still, there were nights she'd retreat, go quiet, pull back, lock herself in the silence she wore like armor. At first, I panicked each time, convinced she'd decided to end it. But eventually I learned to wait. To let her come back when she was ready. And she always did. The age gap never vanished. Sometimes she'd laugh at the slang I used, or I'd stumble over a reference to a band she'd seen live before I was born. Those moments could have made us feel worlds apart. Instead, they reminded me why this mattered, why it was worth fighting for. Because what we had wasn't supposed to happen. And yet it did. One evening, as the summer heat finally broke and the first cool breeze swept through the street, she sat beside me on the porch steps. Her hand slipped into mine, unprompted this time. "Do you regret it?" she asked suddenly, her eyes fixed on the darkening horizon. I turned to her. "Not once." She smiled then, a small, fragile curve of her lips that felt like a victory. "I don't either." The world hadn't stopped watching. Maybe it never would. But in that moment, we weren't hiding anymore. Whatever came next, judgment, gossip, disapproval, we'd face it together. It wasn't a perfect ending. But it was real. And sometimes, real is more than enough.